France is a country facing big problems and a lot of anger. On September 10th, 2025, a major event happened. Hundreds of thousands of people filled the streets. This was the start of the Block Everything protests. People across France showed their strong disagreement with President Emmanuel Macron and his government's decisions. They were especially angry about plans to cut money from important public services. These protests created a huge challenge for President Macron's leadership. A new Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, took office on the same day. This was not an easy start for him. It was his fifth time as Prime Minister in less than 2 years, showing government instability. He immediately faced a nation full of anger and unrest. To control the situation, the government sent 80,000 police officers all over the country. However, the police could not stop the protests. People blocked major roads and disrupted train services. In some places, protesters set buses on fire and built blockades with burning items. There were many clashes between police and protesters. This happened in France's biggest cities, including Paris, Marseille, Lyon, and Bordeaux. The capital, Paris, saw much of the conflict. The Block Everything movement involved many actions. Across France, there were 812 separate events, like rallies and blockades. Estimates for how many people protested varied widely. The government reported around 175,000 people. But unions and other groups claimed the number was much higher, perhaps as many as 500,000. Over 540 people were arrested during these widespread demonstrations. Many young people, some protesting for the first time, joined the crowds. These protests showed a country in chaos, with its new leader facing a deeply angry nation. The Block Everything movement marked a critical moment for France. 2. Why people are angry. The government in France faced big problems, leading to much anger among the people. Just days before the large protests, the Prime Minister's government fell apart. His name was François Bayrou. Lawmakers in the National Assembly voted to remove him. A total of 364 lawmakers voted against his government. Only 194 for it. This was a very clear vote of no confidence. It meant that many people in power did not trust his leadership anymore. This political instability was not new. He was the fourth prime minister to lose his job under President Macron in less than 2 years. This showed how broken French politics had become. The main reason for this government's fall was a new plan for big budget cuts. Prime Minister Bayrou wanted to cut 44 billion euros from the national budget for the next year, 2026. The government said these cuts were needed to fix the country's financial problems and reduce its large debt. However, many citizens saw these proposals as an attack on their well-being. The plan included taking away 2 public holidays, Victory Day and Easter Monday. This meant people would have less time off work and fewer moments to spend with family. But the cuts went much deeper than just holidays. Important public services were also targeted. 4,000 teaching jobs were planned to be cut from schools. This worried parents and teachers alike, who feared it would make education worse. Spending on health care, which is vital for everyone, would go down by 5 billion euros. This caused concern about hospital services and access to doctors. 3,000 jobs in public service, which include many essential workers, were also set to be lost. Additionally, pensions for older people and other welfare benefits would be frozen, meaning they would not increase even as costs of living continued to rise. These plans made many people very worried and angry. France has a long history of a strong social model, where the government provides many services and protections for its citizens. These cuts felt like a direct blow to this way of life. People believed these changes would harm working-class families and those who rely on public services the most. It felt unfair because while these cuts were proposed, money for defense was actually planned to go up by 6.7 billion euros. This contrast made many citizens even angrier. They saw the government choosing to cut important services for everyday people while spending more on other areas. This growing feeling of unfairness and that their basic way of life was under attack was a main reason why people took to the streets to protest in such large numbers. Their anger was deep, coming from a place of fear for their future and the future of their country. 3. The day of the protest. On September 10th, France experienced a very large day of protests. It was called the Block Everything movement. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered to show their anger. This day was a big challenge for the new Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, who started his job on the same day. His first day in office was met with nationwide unrest, showing the deep problems the country faced. Across France, there were more than 800 protest actions. These included over 550 rallies where people marched and gathered in public squares. There were also 262 blockades. Protesters worked hard to stop daily life in many cities and towns. They blocked major roads and highways, making it very difficult for cars to pass. They also stopped trains from running by blocking train stations, causing delays for many travelers. In major cities like Paris, Marseille, Lyon, and Bordeaux, the protests were very visible and active. In Paris, over 1,000 people stood outside the important Gare du Nord train station trying to stop services. Riot police quickly arrived and used tear gas and water cannons to move the large crowds. Protesters built barricades in the streets, often using burning tires and other debris to make their points clear. They blocked major ring roads around the city and even occupied transport depots, further disrupting travel. In the city of Rennes, some protesters set a bus ablaze, adding to the visual impact of the demonstrations. In the southwest, demonstrators cut electrical cables, which disrupted train services and created widespread traffic chaos. In Montpellier, police used tear gas against protesters who had blocked a large roundabout with banners declaring "Macron resign." Schools also felt the impact of the protests severely. Approximately 100 educational institutions across the country were affected. 27 of these schools were completely blockaded, meaning students and teachers could not enter for their lessons. The government responded with a strong police presence, hoping to keep order. A huge number of 80,000 police officers were deployed all over France to control the crowds and stop violence. This led to many arrests. Over 540 people were arrested nationwide for their actions during the protest. In Paris alone, 211 people were arrested, and 415 were taken into police custody. What was special about these protests was who joined them. Many young people, including students from universities and schools, came out to demonstrate. For a lot of them, it was their first time taking part in such a big public protest. This showed a new wave of anger among younger generations, different from past movements like the Yellow Vests. The day was full of action and clearly showed the deep unhappiness of many French citizens with the current situation. 4. Money problems in France. France has very big money problems. The country's public debt is huge, reaching 3.35 trillion euros. This amount is 116% of all the goods and services France produces in a year. This makes France's debt one of the largest in the Eurozone, following countries like Greece and Italy. The government pays a lot of money just to cover the interest on this debt, which takes away funds that could be used for other important services. This large debt is growing very quickly. Every second, the debt gets bigger by more than 5,000 euros. This means that each year, the debt for every person in France increases by over 2,000 euros. Such fast growth makes the country's money situation very difficult and hard to manage for the government. This rising debt also means less money for public services. At the same time, poverty in France has become a serious issue. The number of poor people is the highest it has been in 30 years. About 9.8 million people now live below the poverty line. This is a big increase since the year 1996, showing a worrying trend for many families. There is also a large and growing gap between rich and poor people. The richest 20% of the population earns 4.5 times more money than the poorest 20%. This difference is the biggest in 3 decades. Money passed down through families, called inherited wealth, now makes up 60% of France's total wealth. In the early 1970s, it was only 35%. This shows that it is harder for people to get rich from their own work today, and family wealth plays a bigger role. The poorest 10% of households have only about 3,000 euros in savings, while the richest 10% have more than 633,000 euros. This stark contrast highlights the deep divisions. Even though consumer prices are not rising quickly, people's ability to buy things is not getting better. Workers' real salaries are still lower than they were a few years ago. This means people feel like they have less money in their pockets and struggle to afford daily needs. Economists call this a growth recession, where the economy grows but most people's lives do not improve. This situation makes many people in France unhappy and worried about their future and the country's direction. 5. A broken government. A hung parliament means no one political group has enough votes to control the government alone. In France, this problem started in 2024. President Macron had called new elections, but his party did not win a clear majority. The National Assembly, which makes laws, became split. There were three main groups: Macron's Central Party, a group of left-wing parties, and a far-right party. These groups could not agree or work together easily. This situation made it very hard to create and pass new laws for the country. Because of this, France has faced big problems in its government. In less than 2 years, the country has had 5 prime ministers. Each new prime minister tried to lead, but they all faced the same difficulty: not enough support in the parliament. Without a strong majority, it was impossible for them to get their plans and laws approved. This showed how unstable the government had become. President Macron, who leads the country, has become very unpopular. Recent polls showed that only 15% of French people trust him. This is a very low number, even lower than during other difficult times. About 80% of voters said they do not trust his leadership. This high level of distrust makes it even harder for the government to find solutions to the country's problems. To pass laws when Parliament cannot agree, President Macron has used a special rule. This rule is called Article 49.3 of the Constitution. It allows the government to pass laws without a vote in Parliament. Macron used this rule to push through important changes. Many people feel that using this rule so often is not truly democratic. They believe it shows that the government does not listen to the Parliament or the people. This use of Article 49.3 has become a symbol of how the government acts without full agreement from the people's representatives. The political situation in France shows a deep crisis. A government that cannot easily make laws, many changes in leaders, and a president who is not popular all point to a system that is struggling. The way laws are passed without a vote also raises questions about how well democracy is working in the country. This difficult time highlights the challenges France faces in governing its people. 6. A new kind of protest. The Block Everything movement was new for France. It did not start in the usual way, with big unions or political parties. Instead, it began on social media platforms like TikTok, Telegram, and X. People shared their anger and ideas online, and the movement grew from there. One important thing about Block Everything was that it had no main leader. This made it different from many past protests. No one person or group was in charge. This decentralized way of working made it hard for the police and government to deal with the protests. They could not talk to a single leader or predict where the next protest would happen. The movement was also different from the Yellow Vests protests from a few years ago. The Yellow Vests mainly had older, working-class people from the countryside. But Block Everything brought out younger people, often from cities. These young people included students and new activists. They were worried about money problems, but also about the environment and other world issues. Many different kinds of groups joined Block Everything. It started with some right-wing groups online, but then leftist groups, anarchists, and environmental activists also joined. This mix of people from different political sides made the movement very wide and strong. Even big unions and political parties later showed their support. Encrypted messaging apps were very important for organizing the events. People used these apps to talk safely and plan when and where to protest. This allowed for quick plans and changes, making it hard for authorities to stop the actions. The Block Everything movement showed a new way for people to stand up against the government in France. 7. France and the world. France's problems are not just for France alone. They are very important for the whole world, especially for the European Union. France is the second biggest economy in the Eurozone, a group of EU countries that use the euro currency. So when France faces money problems or political trouble, it can make the entire European economy unstable. The country's very large debt goes beyond the rules the EU has set for its members. This makes it harder for the EU to work well together on money issues and to act as a strong group. The political troubles in France also affect other countries directly. If France cannot solve its money problems, it could start big economic problems for its neighbors in the Eurozone. This might even mean that other countries have to help France with a lot of money. France's situation is also a sign of wider challenges many rich countries are facing. These include more older people, high costs for fighting climate change, and growing differences between rich and poor people. The protests in France are part of a bigger trend seen in Europe, where many people in countries like Italy and Spain are unhappy with their governments. This shows a weakening of democratic trust across the continent. These protests in France are like other movements happening globally, from South America to Asia. Many of them start online, have young leaders, and are driven by economic worries. People in these protests also often do not trust their traditional political groups. However, France's protests have some special aspects. Unlike movements in countries where people fight for basic rights, France already has a working democracy. Here, people want their government to be more responsive and to create more economic fairness for everyone. The Block Everything movement in France is different from its own past protests, such as the Yellow Vests movement. The Yellow Vests were often older people from smaller towns, mainly worried about fuel prices. But the new movement has attracted many young people from cities. They care more about the large gap between rich and poor and the future of the environment. They use social media and networks from universities to organize, which is a new way of protesting for France. There is also a strong feeling among young people that older generations are responsible for the country's money problems. This generational anger, mixed with new ways of organizing through digital tools, makes the French situation unique. France's ongoing challenges serve as an important warning for other democracies around the world. 8. What happens next? The protests in France are not over. Many people are still angry, and the Block Everything movement continues. Unions have announced plans for even more strikes very soon. On September 18th, all the big labor groups will join together. These new protests are expected to be very large, perhaps bigger than the first ones. This means France will likely face a prolonged period of instability and public unrest. The momentum of the movement seems to be growing, not stopping. Sébastien Lecornu is the new prime minister. But he faces the same difficult problems that doomed the prime ministers before him. His government does not have a strong majority in parliament. This makes it very hard to pass new laws or make big changes. He must try to balance what people want and what the country's economy truly needs. For example, his government already decided not to remove 2 public holidays. This early change shows how hard it is to make unpopular decisions right now, because people are ready to protest. France is now at a crossroads. It means the country must make a very important choice about its future. The government needs to find ways to reduce its large national debt and spend less money to meet European Union rules. But the people want better public services, more jobs, and a fairer life. Finding a way to do both is very hard. This difficult situation in France is a serious warning for other democratic countries around the world. It shows that if governments cannot meet people's needs and solve big money problems, countries can become very unstable. The future of France is not clear. The country needs to decide if it will keep its strong social systems or if it must change them greatly because of money problems. The ongoing protests show deep anger and a strong desire for real change from many citizens. It is a big challenge for President Macron and the new Prime Minister Lecornu. The path ahead is full of questions about how France will govern itself. Will the government and the people find a way to work together for a stable future? What do you think is the biggest challenge France faces next?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.